Welcome to a presentation on rights of an unpaid seller. First, let us understand what do we understand by Sale of Goods Act. According to the contract of sale of goods, it refers to a seller transferring the property in goods to a buyer for a price. So, what do we understand by property in goods? Property in goods refers to the ownership in goods. So a seller transfers his ownership in goods to a buyer for a price. So when a seller has sold the goods to the buyer and the buyer has not yet paid the price to the seller, what is the right of this unpaid seller? So, unpaid seller can be understood as a seller who has not received money from the buyer, or this seller has received a negotiable instrument like a check which has been dishonored. So, what is his immediate action? So, an unpaid seller has certain rights. The rights of an unpaid seller are against the goods and against the buyers personally. So, what can the seller do against the goods? We need to understand whether the ownership and goods have been transferred to the buyer or not. So, when the ownership has been transferred, but the goods are still in possession with the seller, so what are the rights that the seller has? One is he has right of lien. So, what is right of lien? Right of lien is to retain the goods and not to transfer the goods to the buyer until he makes the payment for the same. Or if the goods are already being uh, delivered, they are being in transit. If the goods are in transit, which has moved from the seller's warehouse but not yet reached the buyer, the seller can stop the goods in transit. And if the nature of the goods are perishable, then the seller has the right to resell these goods. And the other kind of rights that he has is he can withhold the delivery of the goods and not to pass it to the buyer until the buyer makes the payment. What are the rights of an unpaid seller against the buyer personally? The seller can only file a suit against the buyer. So, what are the different kinds of suits that he can file for? One is he can file a suit for the price. He can ask the court to make sure that the buyer makes the payment of the money of the goods. Second is he can file a suit for damages. The term damages here refers to monetary compensation. So the buyer seller can ask the buyer to make monetary compensation for the loss that he has incurred because of this breach of contract or because the buyer has not made the payment to the seller. Next is he can ask for the cancellation of these contract so that his obligation in the contract also can come to an end. He can also file a suit for interest. Suit for interest when the buyer is making the payment at a later date because of the delay in the payment for the time that is lost and interest can be charged. So these are the rights of an unpaid seller. One is against the goods and the other one is against the buyer personally. Thank you.